Hi, I'm Bill Ritchie and I'm the designer of the Mini Etching Press. In another videotape I oiled and waxed the wooden parts of the press, as you see. And I also glued in the medallions that come with the press when you get the kit. So the medallions or the badges are glued into the wood, all three parts. By the way, you can skip step one. You don't have to finish the wood. You can assemble the press and use it the way it comes from the kit if you want to. The video you just saw was made many weeks ago, and in the interim weeks I made the next 9 steps to putting together this mini etching press. And I followed the steps in the user manual that comes with the mini etching press when you buy it. So I hope you enjoy and understand the next 9 steps to assembling the mini etching press. Step 2 is to mount the wooden hood into the core of the press. The wooden hood has a P and an A marked on the ends, which correspond to the active side of the core, which has the shaft. The passive side has gears. To insert the hood, you first make sure that you've got the A on the active side, and then a slight angle, and with your thumbs on the hood itself, press outward because there's tension on the chain, like that. You can press the hood down into the core. Then open your pack of set screws and the 3/32 Allen wrench. The set screw has 2 ends. One end takes the Allen wrench and the other goes into the wood. You can insert those with your thumb and finger, no problem. Be sure that you've got the correct end. Do that for both sides. And when it's too tight to use your thumb and finger for tightening, switch over to the 3/32 Allen wrench. You turn that screw until it's just inside the surface, maybe 1/8 of an inch inside the steel. Then you put on the brass barrel cap nuts. Just get them started. Then get the 1/8 inch Allen wrench. It's the Allen wrench that fits the brass barrel nuts. And that's the completion of attaching the hood to the core. The third step in assembling the mini etching press is to start the passive side tie rods. The tie rods have bearings on them, and on one end what's called a jam nut. And if you examine each side piece, you'll find a little bit of difference. For one thing, the active side piece holes are threaded. They're going to take the tie rod this way. They're threaded. Whereas on the passive side piece, they're just not threaded at all. They just slip in and out. That's a big difference. To start out, you run this jam nut all the way down to the nut that holds the bearing. You do that for all 4 tie rods because you're going to need that space, as you'll see in another step. Then the passive side piece, you slide the tie rods into those holes. That's the end with the jam nut. you set that aside. The active side of the core has a shaft sticking out of it. The next step, number 4, is to align the side piece, the active side piece, with the shaft and the 4 threaded rods. Then you get your brass barrel cap nuts and start them on the threaded rods. You don't have to tighten them up real tight, just snug up against the wood. And you can use the 1/8 inch Allen wrench to bring them home. That's step 4. The 5th step is to attach the passive side piece to the core of the press. Remember that all the tie rods have had their jam nuts moved all the way to the bearing. Then as you line the 4 protruding threaded rods on the core with the holes on the passive side, you'll find that the tie rods are ready to screw in to the threaded side, the active side of the press. Then you can start the brass barrel cap nuts. And then with the Allen wrench, you can snug them down to the wood. Just snug them down, you don't have to make them real tight. If it happens that these tie rods were not all the way out, you'll have a problem here in that you can't move them. This side is okay. They move around quite freely and they're ready to thread into the active side. But on this side, they're jammed. You'll have to loosen the cap nuts again, just a little bit, to take the tension off the tie rod. Now the tension's off the tie rod and I can put them back in place. Give them a little start. That won't happen again now. Now you can snug the barrel cap nuts back up against the wood. And that's all there is to step number 5. In step number 5, we have the tie rods protruding out the passive side and just starting in to the active side, just starting to thread it in. In step number 6, we thread them all the way through, and if it helps, you can use the little gripper on your fingers until it's just starting to show on the sides, about equal. And you do that for all 4 tie rods. Now they're all started on the active side. You can start the barrel cap nuts on the active side. You need to hold the tie rod. Again, the gripper pad helps hold it steady so you don't move it back out of its threads. And then snug the brass barrel cap nut down with the 1/8 inch Allen wrench, just snug. No need to tighten it up with a lot of force. Then you turn to the passive side. The jam nuts now go all the way out to the wood. Stop at the wood, and then with the 5/16 wrench you can snug the jam nut up to the wood. Then bring the brass barrel cap nut up to the wood and snug it up. And that is the end of step 6. Step number 7 is really just double checking. It's not really a constructing or an assembly part of the process. To double check to make sure that the set screws on the driving shaft are tight. The set screws are checked before the press is packed, but it's a good idea to know where the set screws are, because over the life of the press it's a good idea to check to make sure that they're still tight. There are 2 set screws on one end of the driving shaft on the spur gear, and there's another set screw on the other end of the drive shaft, which is just a spacer. It holds its place and unlikely it would ever become loose. Sometimes we apply a product called thread locker made by Loctite. We remove each set screw and we apply just a drop of the Loctite and we replace the set screw. We do that for each of the 2 set screws on the spur gear. Again, this is not part of the assembly process. It's just something to know about as you use the press over the course of its life, and make sure that those set screws are never loose. Step number 8 is about the wheel. In some of the previous videos you saw the press with the wheel on and with the wheel off. So in this video I'm going to show how to put on the wheel and tighten the set screw with the Allen wrench. You will notice that there's a flat spot on the shaft, and you can tell that there's a indentation where the set screw is bitten into the shaft. So when you mount the wheel, you line up the set screw with that flat spot. Then with the 1/8 inch Allen wrench, you set it all the way down till it reaches that flat spot, and then tighten it up so that it bites into the steel. Make good and tight. And then from time to time in the life of the press, when you're printing, check it now and then to make sure that it hasn't worked loose. That's step 8, attaching the wheel. Step number 9 involves the bed. When it comes from the supplier, it's cut and routed, milled and drilled, and fitted with a steel rack and drilled for safety stops. When I finish the bed, I round the corners with a file and I chamfer all the edges so they aren't sharp. And then I cover the top surface with clear plastic vinyl. First I pull off the protective paper. And then I apply the vinyl. When it's trimmed off, I turn the bed over and remove the other protective paper and insert the safety stops. If you want to remove the clear vinyl plastic, you warm it and peel it off. You can use a hand iron or a hair dryer. Just be sure that that iron isn't too hot and that it doesn't directly touch that vinyl coating or it might melt it. That's all there is to step number 9. Step number 10, the final step, is really just a step for adjusting or fine-tuning your press. The settings were made at the manufacturer to allow space for the bed to pass through under the rollers. But as you assemble the press, you may want to go back and check the distance between these parts of the press that you put together. It's adjustable from the passive side. Remove the bed, or leave it in place, and expose the jam nut. Here, for example. If you loosen the jam nut, move it away from the wood, and then with the 1/8" Allen wrench, you can tighten it in. And that will draw these two sides together until you reach the jam nut. That makes the space here narrower. But you see, the problem is it's too tight now. So you want to loosen it. It could be that in the assembly of the press you made it too tight and the bed won't move smoothly through. Now it moves smoothly through. That's how you adjust the sides of the press.